Thanks for being here. Subscribe to Cheating Stories Best, so you don't miss new stories.
The wife decided to help her sister, but what did it turn into? Today we have a story with a similar plot. Enjoy the show! I've been in a relationship with my husband for over 6 years. We've been married for 4 years and have a 20-month-old son together. We first met at a friend's house party and immediately felt a strong connection. He initiated the conversation, and even from our very first encounter, he struck me as incredibly handsome, confident, and charming. I noticed that several girls, including some of my friends, were interested in talking to him at the party, but within the first 10 minutes of arriving, he approached me. I struggled to find the perfect words to describe how I felt at that moment, but if I had to choose, I'd say I felt almost chosen by him. We started dating a few days later, and the more time we spent together, the deeper I fell for him. I always had this feeling that he was way out of my league. But he never made me doubt that he wanted to be with me. Although I knew he had been with many women before, he never discussed it or brought it up. The few times I asked him if he truly wanted a committed relationship and if he was sure about us, he always reassured me of his love and told me he didn't care about other women. After 2 years, we got married, attempted to have a child, and were blessed with a beautiful son. He had always hoped for a son and a daughter while planning to expand our family further. I've always loved my husband more than words can express. However, after giving birth, I gained some weight. He consistently told me that it didn't bother him and that he loved me just the way I was. He suggested that we could work out together. He goes to the gym at least 4 to 5 times a week. As a shared activity, I always agreed, but for various reasons, we never actually went together. He maintained his fitness routine without trying to pressure me into joining him. As time went on and our baby demanded most of our attention, our intimate life gradually declined. Nevertheless, he kept assuring me of his attraction to me. Most of the time, he would make advances, but I would decline, primarily due to my own insecurities and feeling uncomfortable about my body around him. This is a significant regret for me. He even suggested that we could leave our baby with our parents, either his or mine, to have some private time together, but for some reason, I kept turning him down. My self-esteem deteriorated further, but he tried to uplift me and offer encouragement. When we went out, I would notice other women looking at him or trying to make eye contact, which bothered me, and I would express my concerns to him. However, he always assured me of his love and commitment to me. One day, he came home from work, having put in long hours at the hospital. He went straight to bed, explaining that he was utterly exhausted. During that time, I started going through his phone, checking his Instagram and Messenger messages. I noticed several conversations with different women, including some I knew were his ex-girlfriends. In these chats, some of them had asked him to meet for coffee or suggested meeting up as friends, but he consistently declined their offers. I even came across archived messages from an ex who had messaged him out of the blue, proposing to meet up for some good times, implying a closeness. His response was, "I have a wife," followed by blocking her. For some reason, I began to concoct the idea in my head that he might be cheating on me with at least one of these women. In my state of mind, I contacted an ex-boyfriend I hadn't spoken to in years. One thing led to another, and we ended up meeting at a nearby hotel. Initially, I was seeking some form of payback, but after we had closeness, I was consumed by overwhelming regret. This all transpired during the day while my husband was at work, completely unaware and without any suspicions. It took me 3 days to gather the courage to confess everything to him. When he returned home one day, and we were sitting in front of the television, I burst into tears and disclosed everything. He simply stared at me without uttering a word, then went upstairs and locked himself in our bedroom. I followed him, crying at the door, but he remained silent. It took him a long time, but eventually, he emerged from the room and immediately left the house. He didn't say anything to me as he departed, and he didn't even look in my direction. I've attempted to call him hundreds of times, but he hasn't responded, and I have no idea where he's gone. All of this unfolded just yesterday, and I haven't received any communication from him. I'm afraid to reach out to either his family or mine because I dread the thought of them discovering what has happened. I genuinely don't know what to do and desperately want to save my marriage. I'm overwhelmed with feelings of disgust and regret, and I can't fathom why I didn't trust him. I understand that most of this stems from my own insecurities, but my ultimate desire is to have my husband back. He's left me alone with our baby. How can I get in touch with him? What steps can I take to salvage my marriage? I've received a deluge of hateful responses both on my posts and in my inbox. To the few individuals who provided sincere advice from the heart, I am grateful. As for the rest of you, I won't engage. My life is in shambles. I harbor an intense self-loathing, and all I wish for is to have my husband back. I'm utterly lost and unsure how to proceed from here. Yesterday, he returned home for a brief period before hastily packing and leaving again. When he arrived, he didn't utter a word, went directly to our son, and refused to acknowledge me despite my tears. He explained that he wanted some one-on-one time with our son. Initially, I assumed he came to see our son and would eventually want to discuss things. However, after a while, he began packing a bag, and I panicked. I started crying and pleading with him to stay and talk. I followed the advice of being completely transparent and assured him I would answer any questions he had, but he simply got up, looked at me with a disgusted, cold expression, and said, "I don't want to know anything. I know all I need to know." Then he continued packing, ignoring my pleas. I was in complete distress and professed my love for him, promising to do whatever it took to win him back. I mentioned that I had stopped the closeness midway because I felt guilty. In the middle of that sentence, he forcefully pushed me against the wall, gripped my arm, and yelled, "I told you to shut up." I had never seen him so enraged and repulsed, and for a moment, I feared he might strike me, although he did not. I attempted to embrace him, but he recoiled and told me I was tainted and worthless to him now, expressing his desire to sever all ties with me. This utterly shattered me internally. I inquired about the implications of this, and he confirmed that we would be getting a divorce. Currently, the only thing he desires is the ability to see our son whenever he wishes, but apart from that, he wants nothing to do with me. Later that same night, he called me and informed me that he intended to consult a lawyer and pursue a divorce. I am at a loss for what to do now. I've been crying incessantly since this ordeal unfolded, suffering from panic attacks and unable to eat or sleep. He witnessed my complete devastation, yet he still wishes to proceed with a divorce. I'm overwhelmed with remorse, feeling as though there's a constant weight in my chest and experiencing stomach cramps. I still haven't mustered the courage to contact our families, and I don't know if he is either. I am too ashamed to take that step. I simply yearn to reclaim my life. The thought of a life without him or the prospect of him being with another woman is unimaginable. My life is shattered into a million pieces, and I'm just trying to pick them up and piece them back together. Has anyone managed to convince their partner to return? Is there anything I can do? I'm plagued by thoughts of ending it all, but I'm prevented from doing so for the sake of my son. That was our first story in this video. Let's listen to our next story, which will be no less interesting. I, a 30-year-old female, discovered my sister, a 40-year-old female, cheating on her husband, a 49-year-old male, with another man, a 40-year-old male. This left me in shock because my sister and her husband have always appeared as the perfect example of enduring love. They've been together for 15 years and still display a deep affection for each other in the way they treat one another. My emotions swayed between anger and despair because I consider my brother-in-law as a big brother. And he has been a pillar of support for my sister during her most challenging mental times, never once complaining about caring for her. Upon uncovering the truth, I confronted her, and she initially attempted to deny it. I didn't mince words, telling her that her actions were despicable. I pointed out that she felt good about herself after her husband had tirelessly cared for her, only to repay him with infidelity. I warned her that I intended to expose her, and she begged and cried, insisting that I didn't understand. "Please don't harm us, you'll hurt my husband more than you'll hurt me." After a few days, she requested to meet with me. Throughout our conversation, she appeared to have been crying. She confessed that she had been concealing her husband's secret but felt compelled to confide in me while making me promise not to divulge the information to anyone else. She disclosed that her husband hadn't been intimate with her for most of their relationship. I had my doubts, so she showed me all the texts and emails exchanged between her husband, her therapist, and her diary. It became evident that they hadn't been physically involved for nearly 12 years. Her struggles with depression were linked to this issue, and her newfound happiness stemmed from her relationship with the other man. She explained that since she started sleeping with him, she had become happier, which had also positively impacted her marriage and her husband. I asked her why she hadn't told her husband the truth, and she replied that she couldn't bear to hurt him because she genuinely loved him. She was afraid he would be incredibly lonely without her, as he had always expressed that he had no one else in this world and would be devastated without her. Don't you see that we're all content? Please refrain from causing us harm. Regarding the man involved, she met him through her job, and he happens to be a well-known entrepreneur in our city. She even shared text messages with me. Interestingly, he is also married and has 3 children. It turns out he's grappling with the same issue of a loveless marriage. Yesterday, she requested to meet with me, and to my surprise, she was in his company. It was rather audacious of them. She appeared completely shattered, while he seemed smug and irate, not even willing to acknowledge my presence. During our meeting, she implored me to consider the potential harm to others if their affair were exposed. She assured me that they were terminating their affair and vowed never to repeat it. However, he grew agitated and suggested that we could simply reveal everything and stop hiding. This prompted her to become angry and instruct him to be silent. I'm faced with a dilemma. She explained that she had kept her husband's secret due to his embarrassment and his possessive, jealous nature, which I had observed myself. He had refused the idea of an open marriage. She also showed me messages where they had a heated argument because he believed I should inform her husband so they could be together. However, I'm uncertain about what to do. She still possesses a Cartier love ring that he gave her, and when I confronted her about it, she claimed she couldn't discard such an expensive item but intended to donate it. She keeps it hidden under her clothing, wearing it on a chain. I apologize for the length of this message, but I wanted to provide all the details. I hope you can offer an honest assessment. Would I be in the wrong if I were to inform my sister's husband? I believe this entire situation is unethical, and the deceived parties deserve to know the truth, but it will undoubtedly hurt my brother-in-law. I want to provide an update and let everyone know that I've informed my brother-in-law about the affair. I've carefully read through all your comments and deeply appreciate the insights and advice. Ultimately, I had to make a decision that would allow me to find peace in my conscience. I love my sister, but she must have realized that I couldn't bear the burden of guilt, having been cheated on myself by someone I cared about. I understand the profound selfishness and wrongdoing involved in infidelity. I also know that if I had the chance to do it over, I would want to know the truth because despite the immense pain, discovering the truth ultimately made me feel fortunate. My sister has attempted to reach me multiple times, with about 20 phone calls and text messages. One of her texts reads, "Do you feel better right now? How could you do this to me? I loved you, you ruined my life." I chose not to respond to her, although I had the urge to tell her that she was the one responsible for ruining her life. I refrained from doing so. Our parents are shocked and angry, but not at me. Bill reached out and disclosed everything to them, including discussing potential plans for my sister and him to relocate to his hometown. He is utterly devastated and shattered by this ordeal. My hope is that they can find a way to move forward either together or separately. But most importantly, to discover genuine happiness that doesn't come at the expense of others as it does now. I may have unintentionally portrayed my brother-in-law as offensive towards my sister, and I deeply regret that. My intention was to be as transparent as possible because neither of them is here to present their side of the story. I wanted to make an effort to understand my sister's and her husband's perspectives. As for their current status, they seem to be doing okay. My brother-in-law is profoundly hurt and devastated, but he assured me that he doesn't hold any anger towards me and believes I did the right thing. He acknowledged that sometimes the truth can be painful. He's considering taking a break from work and possibly returning to his hometown for a while. My sister appears to be fine physically, although she isn't speaking to me, which I understand. Her emotional pain is primarily self-inflicted, and she seems to recognize this, as she conveyed to our parents. Her husband has suggested they move back to his hometown because he's concerned about trusting her while she remains in the same city as her lover. He realizes that he can't spend his life following and monitoring her every move, but he's willing to forgive her because he loves her. My parents are deeply upset with my sister, but their anger isn't directed towards me. The only thing they believe I could have done differently is informing them before telling my brother-in-law. That way, they could have had a chance to confront my sister about her actions independently. Regarding her lover, I still don't have complete information, but I know my brother-in-law has messaged him, warning him to stay away from his wife. I've checked both his and his wife's Instagram accounts, and it seems that the wife is now aware of the situation. I'm unsure whether she will choose to reconcile with him or not, but his reaction during our meeting didn't indicate a strong preference. I hope he doesn't have a prenuptial agreement, and she takes him for everything he's got. Everything appears uncertain to me, and I find it challenging to distinguish between right and wrong. Personally, I perceive infidelity as wrong, and that view won't change. Nevertheless, I will share what transpired without injecting my own opinions. My sister and her husband decided to make an effort to mend their marriage, and they even relocated to her husband's hometown. They were temporarily residing with his parents while searching for a new place. To the best of my understanding, as my sister refuses to communicate with me, my brother-in-law had made a request for her to quit her job where she met her affair partner. That's the extent of what I know. My parents have stayed in touch with my sister and her husband, but she has also declined to engage with them. However, last night, her husband called and revealed that my sister had disappeared. She left her phone and all her belongings behind, vanishing in the middle of the night. My parents are extremely worried. Less than 2 weeks had passed since my sister last spoke to my mom, and according to her, my sister seemed fine discussing the adjustments to life in a small town. According to my brother-in-law, they had been having disagreements because she was unwilling to quit her job. In recent weeks, he went to bed one evening, and when he awoke a couple of hours later, she had vanished without leaving a note. This morning, I felt compelled to take some action, so I reached out to the affair partner. He responded with a threatening direct message, stating that both he and my sister would involve the police if we didn't leave them alone. I know his approximate residence, at least the complex, and my sister is presumably with him. I requested to speak to my sister, but he reiterated that if any of us attempted to contact her, they would contact the police. So, it appears that she has left her husband. Now, my parents are in a state of distress, and my brother-in-law is staying with them until he can establish contact with my sister. I informed my family that my sister is with her affair partner. My mom was extremely anxious about not knowing her whereabouts. I also showed them the messages where AP threatened to involve the police, claiming he wouldn't let us harm her again and instructed us not to contact them anymore. My mom is trying to send him direct messages because she's deeply concerned about my sister. She even called the non-emergency line for a welfare check on my sister, but they couldn't take any action since she's an adult. I still don't have much information about AP's family. His wife has made her Instagram account private now. I've heard conflicting stories. Some say he asked for a divorce when this all began, while others claim he is still married. They are very private people, and I can't find much about them online. I had to make sure my sister was safe, which is why I inserted myself into the situation. This time I will stop now because it appears she is safe. I don't want to inform my parents because they would inform my brother-in-law. If my sister doesn't want her husband to know her whereabouts, it's her decision. I've left her alone now. I was just concerned about her, but since I know she is safe, I will respect her privacy. I only want AP to answer whether my sister was mistreated when she moved away with her husband, which led to her running away. He hasn't responded to me yet. I asked my B and he said absolutely not. AP has now responded to me. He confirmed that BIL had been offending my sister when they moved to his hometown. He also confiscated all her electronics. When my sister managed to talk to our mom yesterday, she was able to send a text to AP, who then drove to pick her up. Now he is threatening to involve the police again. I'm confused and don't know who's telling the truth. I'm stepping out of this situation for good and won't take sides anymore. I'm shocked by what B has done to my sister. I never knew about it and I trusted my sister and what she told us about him. There's a rumor that AP and my sister aren't communicating, and AP's wife has made her social media accounts private. When I met him with my sister, he was still married but talked about them coming clean and leaving their marriages. My sister became angry with him and told him no. I suspect he proceeded with his divorce, but it wasn't clear to me because these things don't become public records until the divorce is finalized. For now, online searches still indicate that he is married and living with his family. However, based on what I've heard, mostly from people who know his wife, he left his wife and filed for divorce. He moved out, probably to the apartment I followed him and my sister to the day I caught them. When my sister left town, he was apparently still pursuing the divorce. I'm not defending my sister here, but it's possible he was done with his marriage. Either way, my sister contacted him and claimed that B was keeping her captive and offending her, so he drove to pick her up. I guess they are now living together and she is safe. If AP isn't an offender, I don't trust cheating men to be good people. My husband is upset with me because of everything that transpired. He's avoiding talking to me, and I have my own issues to deal with now. I'm uncertain about what course of action to take. I'm unsure if I should disclose the entire situation to my parents or only reveal that my brother-in-law has been mistreating my sister. My husband plans to visit them this evening to divulge all the details and instruct BIL to leave. Things escalated into a heated argument. My brother-in-law is still residing with them and has threatened to involve the police, claiming that AP has kidnapped my sister. My parents didn't believe my husband's account of B mistreating my sister, which infuriated my husband, resulting in a major dispute. My husband is now refusing to communicate with them and declared that he has finished with my family. The affair partner's wife publicly criticized my sister on social media with photos and derogatory labels, but these posts were removed after approximately a day. And the wife deactivated her social media accounts. AP and my sister are no longer in contact with me, and AP has blocked me. That was our second story in this video. Let's listen to our next story, which will be no less interesting. My wife and I were still very much in love when I found out she was having an affair. We met in our hometown, and after I returned from college, we decided to settle down there. I fell in love with her at first sight, and after a few dates, we started dating officially. We got married after being together for a year and 3 months. Meeting and marrying May felt like a dream come true for me. She was the kind of woman I had always wanted to be with. She was hardworking, beautiful, intelligent, and a lot of fun to be around. Every day with her was exciting, and I cherished waking up next to her. May was also a passionate lover who cared deeply for me. Throughout our marriage, we rarely fought or hurt each other. We lived harmoniously, treating each other with respect. We lived a peaceful life and took good care of each other. I made sure to provide for May and meet her needs. May worked as a receptionist at a prominent women's store, and our combined income allowed us to manage our household comfortably. We never faced financial difficulties because we lived within our means. Over the 2 years of our marriage, we supported each other and strove to find better job opportunities. With May, I felt complete and looked forward to spending the rest of my life with her. She had a childlike spirit and had a knack for bringing joy to any place she went. People adored May, and she was quite popular among her friends, especially since her father held a leadership position when she was in high school. Besides being an excellent wife, May was also a wonderful friend. She had 2 best friends she frequently hung out with. Sometimes they would plan weekend getaways or have their regular girls' night out, and I never objected because I understood the importance of her spending time with her friends. Even in marriage, I had also become friends with her best friends' husbands, so when May and her best friends went on vacation, the 3 of us would spend time together as well. We continued this for 2 years of our marriage, and even when we spent time as a family unit, I never suspected that May was cheating on me with one of her best friends' husbands. While I noticed she was particularly close to one of them, I didn't think it was anything more than friendship. I believed he was the one she related to the most, and I held on to this belief until I discovered a dark truth one evening. May informed me that she was going out to hang out with her friends as usual. I watched her get ready, putting on a new dress she had recently purchased and doing her makeup. This was her usual routine, so I didn't find anything unusual about it. I even gave her some cash in case she needed it for herself and her friends. About an hour after she left, I was looking for my golden watch in her jewelry drawer when I came across May's wedding ring. It struck me as odd that she had left her ring behind, as it wasn't like her to do so. I tried calling her, but after several unsuccessful attempts, I decided to call one of her best friends. When her best friend answered the call, I asked to speak with my wife. She informed me that May wasn't with her and that they weren't planning to hang out that night. While I was trying to process the fact that May had lied to me and left her wedding ring at home, her best friend asked if her husband was with me. I hadn't seen him, and I was surprised by her question. She was shocked when I told her that I hadn't seen her husband since the last time we all hung out. She mentioned that her husband had told her he was going out for a drink with me that night, and it was strange that he wasn't with me. At this point, we both realized that something was amiss. And we suspected that my wife and her husband might be together since they had coincidentally lied to both of us on the same night. To locate her husband, she attempted to check his Snapchat location, but it was turned off. When I checked May's Snapchat location, it was active, and we decided to head to the location. My heart sank when I realized that May's location was a hotel. We began documenting our process of going to May's hotel room. When I knocked on the door of the room she was staying in, she opened it and was utterly shocked to see both me and her best friend. She was wearing a bathrobe with nothing underneath, and her best friend's husband was in bed, expecting her to attend to whoever was at the door and then return to him. As soon as we entered the room, I began to raise my voice at her while recording the incident. She felt deeply embarrassed, her best friend was furious and even physically confronted her husband and May for betraying her. May was overwhelmed with shame and couldn't bring herself to make eye contact with me. She didn't attempt to explain herself and stood there with tears streaming down her cheeks. After I had recorded enough, I left with her best friend and warned May not to come home. She didn't return that night and likely spent it in the hotel room with her affair partner. That night, she not only lost her marriage but also her longtime friend. Her best friend and I decided to post the video online without concealing their identities, intending to further humiliate her. We combined the video with the Snapchat location data and kept sharing them online until many people started reposting them. This was especially humiliating for her because most people in our hometown knew her, and she had been friends with her best friend since high school. This was the first time I had ever been so heartbroken, and I was not myself for weeks. Days after catching her with her best friend's husband, she tried to beg me and promised it would never happen again, but I remained unmoved by her words. We ultimately divorced because I couldn't bear the shame of being associated with her infidelity. Similarly, her best friend divorced her husband and gained custody of their 2 children after the video went viral. My wife couldn't face the public due to the judgmental looks she received from people. She couldn't even attend her high school reunion because everyone had seen the video. On my part, I had to relocate to a different place to start my life anew. Whenever I recall how my wife deceived me and betrayed her friend of more than 15 years, it still astonishes me. She didn't value our marriage or her friendship with her friend, and someone capable of such actions could do even worse things. I know that I won't be entering another relationship anytime soon because my heart still aches when I remember how much I loved my wife and how she ruined everything we had. What do you think of our stories today? As for me, the most interesting and unusual story was the second story. I have not seen such a plot yet. What's your opinion? Write in the comments. See you in the next videos.